maybe there is only one benefit? Hi, this is Caroline from The Happy Sensitive. In this video, I want to talk about something that people don't usually talk about, which is what are the benefits of being raised by narcissistic parents? Or maybe just one narcissistic parent. We can't all have two, only some of us are so lucky. So this video is going to be the kind of video that has all the narcissistic parents in the world go, yes, finally, validation. But I'm not making it for them. I'm making this video because it sucks when you realize that your parents are self-centered assholes, and when you have to work really hard to undo all the trauma and dig up all your true self parts that have been buried under an avalanche of abuse. Whether it's physical abuse, which is more obvious, or emotional abuse, which is to many of us not obvious because it's just, if that's the water that you were swimming in, you don't know any better. So, lots of shitty stuff there. But I wanted to talk about what are some of the benefits, because there are benefits. Now, when I talk about the benefits, I am talking to the people who have gone the codependent route. I'm not talking to the people who have become just as narcissistic as their parents. Okay, that's a whole other story. That's a whole other problem. And by the way, those people are not going to be watching self-development videos because they're already perfect. So, all right. What are some of the benefits? Okay, one really big benefit, and I'm very serious when I say this, is when you grow up with narcissistic parents who are super critical of you, nothing is ever good enough, you stop expecting the world to reward you for basically anything. Now, that sounds really bad, but it has some benefits. You learn to do things because you want to do them. Right? So regardless of whether other people appreciate what you do or not, you learn to do things from the inside out because you're not going to get that outside validation. You're just not. At best, you're going to be criticized at home, and then you're going to be held up as some kind of trophy when your parent is boasting about you to other people and you're just sitting there listening like, you never talk about me like this. Like, this is how you really feel? No, this is not how they really feel. They just saw an opportunity to use you to boost their own social status. Too bad. Okay. But this is a real benefit. It's a real benefit when you are someone who will just do your thing and work hard and not expect lots and lots of rewards. Because life is kind of like that. You can be doing really good stuff, you can be working really hard and still not get a lot of rewards. And what if you grew up in a loving family and they gave you a lot of support and encouragement, and you get used to getting that, and you expect that, and then you go out into the real world and you don't get it. Now, I'm not saying that growing up in a loving family is not good or not useful or not helpful. It totally is helpful. There's like a ton of other benefits, but we're talking about the people who, grew up with narcissistic parents here. You can't swap your parents. You can't trade them in. You can't undo that. So you're just going to have to kind of focus on what you got out of it. Okay, so I really think that's something you get out of it. It really sets you up, if you're that kind of person, to become an entrepreneur. Because you're used to negative feedback, you're used to pushback, you're used to nobody believing in you. That's just what it is to be alive. That's what you think. And then you find out there's other people who have grown up with people believing in them, and you're like, really? But it has benefits because you don't expect that positive feedback from the world. You'll just go and do your thing because you think that's what needs to happen, and you won't be you won't let it stop you when you don't get the positive feedback. And when you do get the positive feedback, you're going to be a little bit suspicious of it. You're not going to take it on board like it's the most obvious thing, because when you grow up with narcissistic parents, you know that when you get positive feedback, there's always a catch. There's always an agenda. There's always something. So you learn not to count on it. You learn not to count on it. Somebody gives you positive feedback, you're like, that's nice, but I'm not going to build my world on that. So I think that's a real benefit. You really learn to, you learn to work hard, not expect results, go for what you believe in, and you're not going to be fazed when the world doesn't love you. because you're like, yep, been there, done that, got this far, we'll get even further. Okay, so that's benefit number 1. Now, let me think about benefit number 2. And I really have to think because it is really hard. Maybe there is only one benefit? Oh! Benefit number 2. You learn to figure things out on your own. Now, this applies even if you have a lot of practical stuff at home. There's a lot of things that your narcissistic parents are not going to tell you because they just can't be bothered to imagine what it's like to be you, okay? So they're not going to think, oh, our daughter is now 16 and these are some things she needs to know. No, they're not thinking about that. The only thing they might be thinking about is what you need to do to uphold your reputation, because that's the kind of thing they care about, because if your reputation goes down the gutter, it makes them look bad. But they're not going to tell you practical life stuff that looking back you think any parents should really teach their child. They're not going to prepare you for being a functioning adult. You're going to have to figure it all out by yourself. But the benefit of that is, again, that you learn to do that. You learn to, anything that you need to do to survive, anything that you need to do to become successful at whatever you care about, you're going to have to figure it out. You cannot expect other people to give you a helping hand or to help you, support you, encourage you. You have to do that yourself. So you become very scrappy. You become very self-reliant and very unfazed when all the outer support falls away. So I think this is good. I think this creates a kind of resilience that really helps you when you really lean into it and see it as a strength. Oh, number 3. You know exactly how to handle difficult people. You're a pro at handling difficult, impossible people. And other people look at you like, how is it that you get along with this person? Or how is it that you get this person to listen, even though they're the most impossible person in the world? You're like, well, I got trained for 18 years, okay? I have some useful tools in my backpack. So that is really helpful because shitty people, narcissistic people are everywhere. And if you don't know how to deal with them, that's a problem. Now, there is a dark side to this. Your ability to work with those people really well probably means you get along with them a little bit too well and you don't really see them for who and what they are. So it can lead to problems down the line when you keep kind of surrounding yourself with narcissistic people and you don't quite understand how you're doing that or what's happening. Like, how is this possible? Like, you're being such a nice person and now you've got all these people who don't support you back. Like, what's happening? Well, you're being too nice to people who are essentially assholes. So that happens to a lot of us. But there's some stuff you need to learn. Like, you need to learn, like, actually, these people who are very much like the people you grew up with are assholes. So don't be too nice to them. But at the same time, sometimes it's helpful to have that kind of survival mechanism in your backpack to fall back on. And it's okay to use those habits and those ways of interacting and communicating that you've developed, but you just want to make sure that you know that this is not real. You know that just because you get along doesn't mean these are great people. All this means is that you're very, very good at anticipating how to respond and what to say to them. Right? And because of that, you get along. But if you say one thing they don't like, you do one thing they don't like, boop, you're out. So, once you really know deep down, like, okay, this is who I'm dealing with. This is a very narcissistic person. All my childhood coping mechanisms are going to kick in because I know exactly how to deal with them. But I have to remind myself, I have to remember, this is not a person I want to pull closer. I only want to manage them and deal with them as much as I have to. And meanwhile, I need to remember, don't really want to get along with these people. Not really. Just enough to make things function. Okay. Okay, I've been trying to think of more, but these are the big 3 that I can think of right now. There might be more, there probably are more. Of course, it really sucks when you have parents who are narcissistic because And when I say narcissistic, I mean very narcissistic, because it means that they're basically walking around like big toddlers trying to get their way all the time, and you have to be the parent from a very early age. But, that actually brings a lot of self-reliance, and, you learn responsibility early, which does have its benefits in the workplace. Now, in your personal relationships, it tends to really mess with you because you end up being everybody's therapist, everybody's mother, everybody's everything, and you don't get a lot back, right? So that pattern of interacting is something that is worth changing. But there are definitely benefits, and looking back, I think it has helped me in some ways to become the entrepreneur that I am in a way, because I just kind of set out not expecting the world to love me, support me, help me. I was kind of prepared for the worst. I was like, all right, let's just have a plan B here. Let's have a plan B there. Let's make sure that if this doesn't work the way I want it to, I've got something else set up. I wasn't just like, oh yeah, everything's gonna be fine, and just jump. No, I didn't do that. And that's because I grew up in this family where that's what I learned. Like, don't count on anybody. Like, don't think that they're gonna help you figure stuff out, because they're not. So yeah, that's not fun, but you got to look back and also see what you gained because of it and what skills you developed. And some of those are actually good things. All right. I hope that you enjoyed this, that you found this helpful. This is Caroline from this is Caroline from thehappysensitive.com. Have a really good day. Bye. Okay, so I gotta tell you this story. Real, true story, by the way, but I gotta give you some context, otherwise it's not gonna make any sense. So, the light in my fridge has been off for, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 years or something. The light broke, I got used to it. I didn't really know how to open the thing where the light was. I didn't know if it was easy to replace. I just didn't know. So I just got used to the light not being on, and I just dealt with it. And then recently I had somebody come and fix some things in the house. And I happened to mention to him that, oh yeah, by the way, the light in the fridge is also off and I don't mind, blah, blah, blah. And he said, oh, actually, that's really easy to fix. Here, let me show you. So he opened the little compartment where the bulb goes. He's like, yeah, I just need to get a new one. You can get it at the supermarket. So about 6 weeks later, because that's how long it takes me to get these kinds of things fixed, I finally remembered to get a new light for the fridge. And I put it in yesterday night. And then this morning, it's been a really dark day, right? So rain, gray. So I opened the fridge, and part of me is like, wait, something is different. This does not compute. And I swear that my first association was that somebody was living in the fridge. Okay, now here's how my brain got there. Okay, so I was so used to fridges being dark, right? A fridge is a dark closet with food inside and it's cool. That's what my brain had gotten used to. And houses are these blocks where if the light is on, somebody's home. And so somehow my brain just put 2 and 2 together. And so I opened the fridge and I was like, who lives here? Almost like I just felt like I was going to startle a gnome or something, or an elf was going to pop out and be like, wow, how dare you? I was in the shower. I know, it's crazy. This, by the way, is why in high school, a lot of people did not believe that I never did drugs. Well, never is a stretch. I did try weed 3 times. It was a disaster. I never did it again. But people always assumed, they were like, oh, you got to be on drugs. You got to be, nah, you're high. No, you're drunk. And I never got drunk. And it's stories like this. But this is what my brain was thinking this morning. It's like, oh, there's a gnome in my fridge. And he's home, just, I don't know, scuttling around amidst the salad. So yeah, that's the kind of thing, the kind of adventures that you have when you're in quarantine. Or at least, well, I'm not technically in quarantine, but we're on lockdown. So we're all kind of in quarantine. I'm sure you're probably in quarantine when you're hearing this, unless it's much, much later. And if you're listening, if you're from the future, from my perspective, so you're listening to this 30 years later, quarantine was when there was this pandemic, there was this virus, and we all had to stay home and avoid other people as much as possible. And then you get this kind of cabin fever, and it kind of changes your reality in subtle ways. And then at some point, the highlight of your day is that you open the fridge and you're convinced that there's a gnome who lives there. And it makes perfect sense for about 20 seconds. And then you realize, oh, no, wait, that is not what this is. This is just that I replaced the light, and other people always have a light on in the fridge. I just didn't. By the way, very bad feng shui to have the light in the fridge off, right? I'm sure that feng shui specialists listening to this right now, if they are listening to this, they would be abhorred. Like, Caroline, you are just throwing you're throwing your good luck down the drain, not fixing this light bulb. You could have done it years ago. So, but that does mean that now that this light bulb has been fixed, I mean, that's got to bring some, good energy into some quadrant of something in my life, for sure. So we'll see what happens. Meanwhile, I got to enjoy believing there was a gnome living in my fridge.